Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
What's up, y'all? It's 2025. This is the Casa de Cavazos. I'm Justin Cavazos.
It's Ada Cavazos Square.
And who else we got in the room?
Nathan Cavazos, and we got a special guest today.
This is Jared. What's up, fam?
We got the bonus sibling in the room.
Good times.
Yeah, 2025. How did y'all ring in your new year?
I burned myself with a sparkler.
Oh man, I've never heard that happening before. Not
Fireworks
to
are
an
dangerous,
adult.
sir.
Started the year maimed.
Although I usually don't hear injuries from sparklers, so that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's like a special display of incompetence.
So we actually didn't do any fireworks at all. And we didn't even have champagne. We're getting that old, me and Nathan.
But we did find a surprise beer at the end.
Yes.
Oh, the Chimay?
There was a secret Chimay hidden in the fridge that no person found but us last night.
I was aware of it.
Okay, then. It was not that secret.
It's like when you're getting iced. Do you know about people who get iced? Or are you too old for that?
Yeah, what's that?
What is that?
It's like when you like hide a Smirnoff Ice somewhere, like at a party or wherever, and if someone finds it or just stumbles upon it, they have to drink it all right there on the spot.
Oh, there's another form of iced that I've heard about, but it has nothing to do with alcohol.
What?
It has to do with if you park in an electric charging spot when you have a combustion vehicle. That's called iced.
Oh, that's less fun.
That's not exciting.
That's why I was very confused, because whenever I read about iced, it's always about electric vehicle charging spot blocking.
I saw people get iced last night. There was someone at this New Year's party who hosted the party and just planted Smirnoff Ices in his house.
That's the way to do it.
And apparently, like, even
That's
if
crazy.
people had seen him put the ices in when they were setting up for the party, he would move them around throughout the party when no one was watching so that no one would know where they were.
I want to be friends with that guy.
I want to hear about being an ER doctor on New Year's Eve. I feel like the reason you only get sparklers a lot of the time is because you've seen what happens when fireworks and alcohol are involved frequently in the ER.
There can be major injuries to the extremities, to the eyes, just horrible possible injuries. So we don't buy anything other than sparklers. So that's pretty much the story.
What
But
was
we've
like
seen
the worst one you saw?
I don't think I've seen one that's that bad. Usually just like injuries to the hand, something like that. But I've heard of other stories, like people losing an eye. There was also an NFL player at some point that I think he lost significant parts of his fingers.
Yeah, Jason Pierre-Paul.
Boom.
Yeah, so
That's how his fingers went.
I don't think the fireworks are worth it. I can enjoy someone else that's professional doing the fireworks, but we don't buy fireworks that are more intense than sparklers.
So it's time to hire a professional firework guy next year.
That's possible.
How do you find one?
I don't know. Call the fireworks shop and see if they know any people.
Get a new sponsor for the pod. Just give me like
I don't know if-
fireworks salesman.
I don't think I want a fireworks sponsor.
The fireworks guy is some dude that only has his thumbs left.
That's like for an ER doc getting a trampoline sponsor. That just doesn't make sense.
So what I want to know is, were those the only fireworks were available at your adult gathering?
Oh, no, there were some that were going boom. I got smooth that. I ran away. The first one went off. I just, went back to the house for my own safety. I was embarrassed.
Did you pee yourself?
Only a little bit.
All right, well, let's talk about bird flu then.
Great
Oh yeah,
transition.
we're working on the segues. We're figuring them out.
Well, this is something that we
Speaking of
were
things shooting
talking
in the
about
sky.
last night. We're talking about last night, someone posted on Blue Sky that there was a report in the New England Journal that there was a 13-year-old who got extremely sick from bird flu. 2 x-rays were shown where you can see that the person had massive fluid in the lungs. They ended up surviving, but it was extremely critical. They were on ECMO. They did have risk factors. They had mild asthma and obesity. But still kind of scary to think that it's possible for bird flu to cause this in a 13-year-old.
It's nuts. Is it because of like the severity of the bird flu, or are there other health factors involved to make that kid so sick?
That's the question. At this point, we don't have enough patients to know.
Man, we don't know anything.
That can happen with medicine. You got to get some more information, some more experience.
That's what was crazy during the pandemic. People were like, "Oh yeah, well they said one thing at the beginning, and then they said something completely different." So they're lying to us. Like, no, dude, this is scientific method.
That's
Go
how
to school.
medicine works.
What about cats and bird flu, though?
Cats and bird flu?
Yeah.
What's the question about that?
Well, I read that a cat died from bird flu infection
What?
after consuming some raw pet food.
Yeah, so you better protect your cat, Justin.
Our cat does not go outside.
Put up a wall.
Maybe your cat needs to wear a mask.
Build the wall.
There was some mention, too, that the Biden administration actually hasn't prepared very well for this pandemic, or this possible pandemic. They really haven't done a good job with trying to contain the bird flu. So hopefully this doesn't get out of control and start affecting a lot of humans and doesn't start causing a lot of critical illnesses in humans, because we may not be ready for it.
Where's the bird
Yeah.
flu now? Like, where is it located?
I mean, I think it's been in the entire country as far as being in cows in particular. But it hadn't really been affecting a lot of humans so far.
Well, the cat that died was in Oregon.
Rest in peace.
And the 13-year-old, I think the 13-year-old was in Canada, actually. British Columbia.
Ah, so West Coast. That's not too far from Oregon.
So according to the CDC, the confirmed human case summary says that the bulk of 2024 bird flu cases started from dairy herds in California.
Have you ever
Yeah.
driven down I-5 in California, Nathan Rada?
I don't recall.
Not that I recall.
So I-5 is the main interstate between LA and the San Francisco Bay Area, and a certain part down the way, there's like a huge like cow farm, like a mass-produced cow farm, and you can smell it. You can smell it from miles away, and it's just unfortunate. It smells terrible, and you can see them from the side of the road. All these cows just like crammed together, shoulder to shoulder, in all of these stalls. I really got a lot of access to the smells because that was about as far as my car could get before I needed gas. I was like, God damn it, I kept on forgetting to get gas before then.
Terrible.
So you have to actually go outside and smell like being downwind of where all these cows are slammed together.
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic because it may become an issue, and knowing how the Trump administration has been in the past, I'm not super confident that they're going to do any better than the Biden administration. So we'll have to see what happens.
So can like those spy drone birds that are fake, can they transmit bird flu?
By
What do you
injection
mean by
only.
fake? Are they robots?
What's the birds a real thing? Does anyone
I don't
know
know
about that?
I don't know about that now.
Well, people just laughed without knowing about what it was.
Yeah, that's what people
Yeah.
do.
You mean Hitchcock? The birds? I laughed. I know that. I'm a cultured man.
All right, Wikipedia.
Grandpa actually told me a story once about, because he doesn't wear his hearing aids, sometimes he doesn't really understand what people are saying, so he was just laughing, and someone actually got really upset. Like, why are you laughing at that? And he's like, oh, I didn't know what you were saying.
All right, just so we all know this. This is from Wikipedia. Birds aren't real is a satirical conspiracy theory which posits
Oh.
that birds are actually drones operated by the U.S. government to spy on American citizens. In 2018, journalist Rachel Roberts described Birds Aren't Real as, quote, a joke that thousands of people are in on.
That's
Yeah, but some people believe that
interesting.
shit.
Yeah, so the background
Okay,
here
Chris.
is that this guy, Peter McIndoe, created the conspiracy theory on a whim in 2017 after seeing pro-Trump counter-protesters at the 2017 Women's March in Memphis. He wrote the words, "Birds aren't real" on a poster and improvised the conspiracy theory among the counter-protesters as a spontaneous joke.
Well, people are getting a little crazier. They're believing conspiracy theories, maybe because they don't read as much. I don't know. Well, we will be talking about that.
Well, if birds aren't real, then they can't give us the flu.
That makes sense.
Does it?
if they're non-living things, then you would think that they can't give you the bird flu. So speaking about people not really reading a lot, let's talk about accelerated reader, which I think is kind of relevant in that. I don't think we really did accelerated reader when we were growing up. We did more like reading logs, and at some point we were doing the Pizza Hut thing, where I think
It
you
was
had to
called Book
read.
It. Book It
Yeah.
was the Pizza Hut thing.
But it was
Yeah.
badass.
Yeah. But I don't think that there was like a lot of testing or anything. I think you just read books and you read a certain number of books and you got pizza, right?
Well, accelerated reader was a thing in elementary school for sure. I know there was like color coded stuff, and there were like
For you
a
guys,
specific
because you're
specific number of points that you could earn for reading certain things.
You would take a short test on the computer, and depending on how well you performed, you would log points for having read that book.
Yeah.
But are you saying that Book It was used in accelerated reader?
No, I
The
think
points
those are
that you got
separate.
from Accelerated Reader translated into Book It coupons.
Okay. I don't think that accelerated reader was around when we were at that point, or they weren't using it yet in our school.
I mean, it was great because I'm a very food motivated individual.
What do you think about accelerated reader though, as far as making people better readers?
I think it's a nice like first step to motivating folks to read. I can't speak as to the point value for each book or what the politics are in the books that are selected for the accelerated reader program, but I feel like it was a really good start if someone is motivated by a free pizza or whatever, or a trophy at the end of the year.
Okay.
So you're saying that if it's kind of used in a very blunt fashion, where you're just kind of getting people to be interested in reading and read some books,
Yeah.
it works that way.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
at the end of the day, it shouldn't really be about the points. It should be about the enjoyment of reading. But I feel like that's the pitfall of having a point system for something like that. It ultimately becomes all about the points.
So yeah, so now it's being twisted, and I think it's actually unmotivating some students.
Wait, so what's your access to accelerated reader? What's your experience?
Well, my kid's been doing it for at least 5 years now, and I'm very involved in terms of the books and in terms of the tests and trying to see what exactly is happening, and I think it's terrible.
Why?
Well, for one thing, we've got some examples right here. So I've got 2 books. I've got Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton, and I've got Diary of a Wimpy Kid, No Brainer. Do you think that these are on the same level, just without even knowing what's in Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Have you read Andromeda Strain?
Long time ago.
So, according to Accelerated Reader, they're both 6th grade books. And when you open them up, it's clear that they're massively different in terms of levels. And the kid's going to pick the easier book to get more points. And, oh, it's on my level, so I can do it. I can do the 6th grade book. But they're not getting better as a reader because it's a bad book. Not great writing, not a lot of vocabulary or higher level vocabulary.
Hey, it's a very popular book, okay? They made movies on it.
It's popular, but what is it doing for my kid? So I actually told her she needed to read harder books. She picked the Andromeda Strain, which she actually loved. She thought it's the best book she's ever read. Oh, when you look at it, I mean, the words are like college level words
Pick one.
in a lot of areas.
Yeah, let's hear some selections from both these books. All right, what do we got?
Oh, there's pictures in this one.
Yeah, it's like a comic style.
Yeah, so it's a little bit like a graphic thing.
I have the Diary of a Wimpy Kid book in my hands, and I see a big sign that says "Bring back fudge dogs." Now, that's not a word I've ever heard before, not even in college. So,
A Torrent of Discoveries, Immunochemistry, Transplanted.
Does Layla know what any of those words mean?
I'm not sure if she does, but she did ask me for help for several of the words. But I think that's the thing that Accelerated Reader doesn't get. Like, people need to challenge themselves in order to learn new words. You know, you can't just read easy books and then think that you're going to understand higher level words or higher level texts.
I think in the beginning, it's more about being able to comprehend things, not so much. If you can't really understand what you're reading, you're not going to ever get to the level of enjoyment, I think.
Yeah, I think that there are certain concepts that just become harder to explain and understand with nuance if you don't even have that literary foundation. I mean, like, how can you talk to someone about, I don't know, like the economy, or how to become medically literate if there's no foundation? If the reading level, the maximum reading level, is that of a sixth grader.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up when there was no accelerated reader obstructing me from reading. So I read everything. And even if I didn't understand the words, I would still try to read through it, look up the word, or try to figure out what the word was from the context.
Well, how did you get into reading?
No, I just loved it. And I didn't have an iPad.
Yeah, I think we
There was no
just
such
had
thing
no
back then.
choice.
You'll read, God damn it.
Well, no, like we didn't have the devices now that our children have. So I remember just being awake till midnight, just reading and reading and reading. Because I mean, what else was I going to do? I had nothing else.
In first grade, I was at a point that I was reading a book every day. It was insane how much I was reading.
Well, do you think that there is an artistic benefit that books still have over all the media that we have access to nowadays?
Of course. I mean, if you just compare a book to a movie can never give you the same level of story depth as the book.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that you can put together in the amount of time that you have to create something.
The other thing is when you look at the tests, they're testing the student on memorizing facts from the book to test if they read the book. And so that also is anti-enjoyment because you're trying to remember like, oh, okay, maybe they're going to ask me this on the test, so I need to remember these little details rather than enjoying the story. And
Yeah.
I've actually looked at the test because at some point they were available, and even when I read the books, I didn't know some of the answers because I was enjoying the book. I wasn't thinking like I need to memorize these things.
Yeah, that's a weird way to kind of handle it. And what if they're just like picking and choosing from like an unmemorable part of the book? Like, are there like mediocre books in the accelerated reader program? Like books that are so mediocre and unmemorable where you're like, ah, shit, I don't remember. That book was so boring.
So there was a situation where she picked out a book from the library, she started reading it, and it was extremely boring. And so she didn't want to continue. But then the school told her that she had to finish it.
What?
Yes. And I then complained that that was ridiculous, that was anti-enjoyment of reading, that's not helpful at all. Because not only would she not enjoy it, she was going to read it extremely slowly and drag through it instead of reading some more enjoyable books, possibly more books in the same time frame.
Wait, what book was it? I want to know what book was so boring and terrible.
I don't know.
Not worth mentioning.
Yeah, it's so unmemorable you can't remember the book. The thing is that I know what I'm doing. Like, I read a lot, and I'm a very elite reader, and it's not going to work to block a child from challenging themselves. It's not going to work. I can understand that it helps to have some incentive to at least have some reading done, and some kids, that's the only way they're going to read. But ultimately, she should be used as a blunt tool and not as a sharp tool. And you shouldn't be telling kids they can't read certain books.
Are there books that you think that someone has to read? Like even if they don't like it, even if they don't want to, like it's a must read.
Yes,
No.
Good Energy by Casey Means.
We're going to talk about that later. But no, I think there's so many books out there. You can find books that people will enjoy, and you don't have to force a certain book on them.
Yeah.
And I also want to point out that I also learned yesterday, and this made me feel a little bit nauseous. They're owned by private equity now. Renaissance Learning,
Uh-huh.
the company that makes Accelerated Reader. So they've actually passed through a couple of private equity companies. And this is like big business. I found a contract where for a 2,000 student school district, it was $35,000 to use the program.
What?
Yes. So I don't really have a lot of like hope in terms of what they're doing for my kid when it's private equity that is trying to extract money from schools.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our schools are poorly funded in the States to begin with, and what they choose to spend that funding on sometimes is baffling. I think encouraging students to read is great, but man, 35 grand just to have access to a program like this, that seems insane. I mean, I was just reading about how like the school district that we grew up in the Harlingen School District in South Texas, that they want to cut all of this money from their budgets, but they want to increase funding in places like marketing to increase enrollment, right? Which I guess is like, it's good for the school district. It's good to get people in the schools. But while trying to increase enrollment, they're also trying to reduce the number of teachers. And they're trying to encourage folks to retire or resign for a grand total of $1,000. When it's all said and done, for all the services some of these teachers have done for these school districts, not a whole lot.
Yeah. We're also talking about Texas. The education's not great here, and it's probably going to get worse with certain administrations that we've got. So we'll see what happens with that.
What's the whole plan with the Department of Education? Are they still trying to cut it?
I believe so. Although, if you look into what the Department of Education does, I don't think it's really going to affect K through 12 education that much. The issue is that, for example, in Texas, you're going to have a very Republican state Senate and House. And that's where the issues are going to arise as far as the pathway for education here.
Well, what kind of issues?
So one issue is already that they're going to add Christian education, which I don't care as far as that specific subject, but I don't think that it should be something that's taken away from academic things. And I also don't think that you should force that on people who have other beliefs. It's a slippery slope, I think.
Yeah. How are your daughters reading, Nathan?
They're not enjoying it so much as I would like them to, which pretty much goes down to the electronic devices we have today. It's kind of a struggle for me, to be honest. I'm trying to figure that out right now. Hopefully one day they'll be like their cousin and want to read for enjoyment and not just for points or dollars.
Should just adopt a really granola lifestyle. Throw the TV in the trash. Do home cooked organic meals and never leave the house.
I mean, ideally, if you don't buy devices for your kids, that's the best. But it's really hard to do that, especially when you're working and you're busy, and sometimes you just got to have your kid watch a show. I mean, that's just the honest truth for most of us. I mean, at first I was extremely tired all the time. My child didn't sleep very well, and then I was also doing rotating ER shifts, so that was really the only way.
Yeah, I was hearing a friend talk about how her parents kind of interacted with the world before all of this. Like when they were younger, if you're waiting around to do anything or hanging out with someone else, there are actually some people who just carry around a deck of cards with them and memorized all of these card games. So hey, you went to the restaurant, but the wait's gonna be 30 minutes or whatever. It's we'll just take out the cards.
Yeah.
We'll hang out, we'll play around.
Yeah, there were definitely things that were better before we had all this technology. I think kids played around outside a lot more. They read a lot more. And probably mental health was better as well.
I think with kids hanging out outside, there's also a lack of access to third spaces for them. I mean, we in this culture where people don't really want to let their kids operate on their own in the world.
What's a third
From the
space?
fear. Third spaces being somewhere other than, home and school/work.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we were growing up, the local elementary school around the block, open, had this big field, off hours, you throw football, play soccer. But now all of these schools have all these fences up. And everyone has an armed security guard sign on the outside.
Sometimes not just regular chain link fences, actual bars, iron bars.
Yeah, everything got locked down, closed campus.
Your school is a prison. All this is reminding me of just how I've been observing loneliness, and there's been tons of articles about it too. People are talking about it all the time, but we're just a bunch of individuals in this individualized society, and we don't know how to make long-lasting connections anymore. A lot of it is this lack of access to these spaces. Also, if we're bored, we can just withdraw into a device for the most part. I mean, I am someone who I like my device media, but I'm also aware that it's a problem sometimes when trying to interact and connect with other people, because what else are you going to do? Oh, you have to actually talk to people. You actually have to get involved with the community in a way that you would otherwise not. And then the communities you do get involved with are with these faceless entities sometimes, whether it's an online community where you're just you're chatting on forums, and it's so much easier to detach someone's humanity from that person. It's kind of crazy. There's a creation of these community spaces, which I think is is good for folks. But I mean, the reason why podcasts and like if people are listening to this, like podcasts like this tend to succeed is because people are just like they're shooting the shit and they're talking like they're their friends. And I have multiple people in my life that I know that have at some point kind of done this thing where they don't really interact with the people in their lives or make real meaningful connections with friends, but they listen to a lot of podcasts, and these people that they listen to on a regular basis are basically their friends. But it's like this one-way channel to that friendship.
Parasocial relationships 101.
That was brought up in a podcast that was trying to figure out why people listen to Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson, people like that, and they did think that one issue is people are trying to listen to these people because they're lonely, and also because for whatever reason, from listening to these people, they've started to trust them.
Yeah.
What was this?
I think it was the Bulwark Pod with Tim Miller.
Never heard of it.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Former Republicans that talk about why they are not on board with the current Republicans.
Like you.
Well, I don't think I'll ever be a Republican again.
What would the Republicans have to do right to get you back?
They'd have to act like Mitt Romney. They'd have to be a lot more normal. No more conspiracy theories.
I think conspiracy theories are here to stay.
Yeah, let's make a new one right now.
Birds aren't real.
No, that's an old one. Think of a new one.
Birds are real.
Are we ready to talk about? Are we ready to talk about Casey Means and some other conspiracy theories?
Sure. Who is Casey Means, and why do we care about her?
She's an alum of you guys.
Of us?
She's a Stanford alum.
I didn't educate her at all.
All right, she's your alum. I don't. How would you say it? I don't know.
She's an alum of your alma mater? She went
Yes.
to your alma mater?
Yes.
For someone with as many degrees as you have, you don't seem to know how to talk about college.
Apparently, it's because I didn't go to Stanford.
Over.
Yeah, you're just a doctor. You're just going to be a lawyer.
So Casey Means went to undergrad at Stanford, medical school at Stanford, and then went to an ear, nose, and throat residency, and she quit in her final year before finishing.
Mm-hmm.
She claims that she quit because she just couldn't continue, knowing that she wasn't fixing people, fixing their underlying root cause of chronic disease. And that was supposedly why. Now that's a red flag to me, because why would you quit residency when you're almost done? Might as well just finish at that point. So now she's become like a functional medicine type person. And she published this book called Good Energy. Essentially, it's this conspiracy theory kind of slant that feeds into her selling a product, which is she wants to sell a glucose monitoring device through levels.
So it's like a giant ad, that book? You're reading it, right? Or have you finished it?
I've read a lot of it and I've skimmed the rest of it. The end is like recipes, so I don't think I need to read every recipe to complete the book.
I don't know.
Any good.
You should try them out.
We should just do a side podcast where we're just making Casey Means recipes and dunking on them.
Not enough salt. Too much butter.
So her whole thing is that allegedly doctors are not treating the chronic illnesses properly as far as treating the root cause, prescribing diet and exercise. That all they're doing is giving people medications and they're not solving the root cause. That medicine just wants people to be sick. That being sick helps the doctors make more money. Which is ludicrous. I don't know any doctors that want people to be sick.
Yeah.
I mean,
The health system's pretty overloaded right now. Like
Yes.
What I constantly hear from the people that I know who work in the medical field is that they never have enough time because
Right.
the patient to doctor ratio is poor.
yes. I don't know how this Stanford educated person is writing complete lies as well.
Hey, I gotta say, at Stanford, there were a lot of brilliant people that I met, but there are some people who are some of the dumbest people I've ever met who actually think they're very smart. I'm not gonna name any names, but they do not know who they are.
I just saw her on a podcast today, and she's just saying like the most common sense things.
Like what?
Well, she's basically going on saying that there's a trifecta of things that are bringing us down, which I believe is mitochondrial the disruption,
Yes.
oxidative stress, and inflammation, which all comes down to just what you put in your body. I mean, I think we all know that if you eat healthy, you're going to feel pretty good. I mean, do we really need somebody to tell us that?
It's also a complete lie that doctors are not telling you to diet and exercise.
They say it all the time.
Yes. They're not telling you, yeah, just eat whatever you want. I'll just give you some pills.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to reference studies like, oh, well, if you walk 8,000 to 12,000 steps a day, you'll probably live longer. I'm just like, wow. Like, okay, so why is the health community so obsessed with this person?
Didn't know that. I don't know. I feel like I'm not someone who's in like terrible shape. Like I go work out like semi regularly and I generally feel like pretty okay. But my BMI would technically classify me as overweight. So just off of that metric, and because of our family's tendency to have high cholesterol, I do get told to eat better and exercise and consider, like how I can change a few of these habits. I've changed from we don't purchase milk in our house. We purchase oat milk. We use cream for other recipes, but for the most part, most of what we're drinking is oat milk. And that was because a doctor talked to me about possibly changing some things in my diet in order to kind of start combating the cholesterol thing. Like I don't think doctors are not telling you not to do this.
Right.
But I mean, you're drinking oat milk, which is ultra processed. So by Casey means that's a very bad thing you're putting in your body, sir.
Oh, so what should I put in my body? Serious question.
What did I tell you earlier? What did she say?
Oh, yeah. She said that you need to get unprocessed food from good soil.
Yeah, unprocessed food from good soil.
I don't know how you
that is
determine
the
the
best
good
thing you
soil.
can do.
Just test it. Just like stick your finger in and go.
Did she tell you how to test the soil?
No, she did not tell me how to test the soil.
I just want to say that I was educated at the University of Texas, and I am a way better researcher than Casey Means. Sorry. She, on page 63 of her book, stated that John D. Rockefeller, realizing he could use byproducts from oil production to create pharmaceuticals, heavily funded medical schools through the U.S. to teach a curriculum based on intervention first. I looked that up, and it literally said that was a lie that came from TikTok. Like, it's ridiculous. And then it goes on to say that the Flexner report basically created this system that's terrible for us. And then I went to read the Flexner report, and that is not what they were trying to do. The Flexner report was made because apparently at that time in the early 1900s, the medical education was terrible. Like, there was no standardization. There were, I think, 150 medical schools, but some of them were barely medical schools. And a lot of them didn't really have much in terms of prereqs. Like, you could just graduate from high school and not really be ready for med school and just go in.
Now, do you really think that the average reader is going to be doing the extra research? Like, you have people who get all of their information for TikTok. Like, they'll go on rabbit holes that the algorithm gives to them. And they'll actually be like, well, what article were they sourcing, and was this a reputable source?
Well, that's kind of the point of this pod when we first started it, is trying to fill that gap where people are not looking for these sources.
Yeah. Well, because people nowadays, they assume too much. They assume that Casey Means is telling them the truth, or this TikToker, or Joe Rogan. And oftentimes they're not. They're not researching properly, or maybe they have some agenda. I'm not sure what's going on.
But they don't trust the people who actually are doing the research. The journalism, scientists.
Correct. It went from everybody would say, get a second opinion from your doctor, which is fine, to they just went to questioning everything. Like, it doesn't matter what you're... Which is weird to me, which I've told Ada, is that sometimes, like, I don't get it. You're going to question doctors who have years and years of education, scientists, and you'll question everything they say. Any little thing that pops up on the web, you'll discredit them. But me, working as an electrician, I show up, you don't have a single question for me. You just believe whatever I tell you. Like, it's insane to me.
It's also insane to me that they've been anti-reading now. Like, they don't want to trust, like, New York Times or books. And maybe that's why people can't research properly.
Yeah.
Like, the Flexner report is easy for me to read. And essentially it talks about how
But you're
we
an
actually
elite
had
reader.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
can we see your Elite Reader Award?
I don't know. I gave it to myself. I guess the ACT did give it to me as well with their score.
Mm.
So the Flexner report actually said that at that time we actually had too many doctors, but they were so bad, a lot of them were quacks, that they needed to massively decrease the number of med schools because there were barely any that really could provide the proper medical education.
When was that published?
I think it was the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
Let me double check.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this goes back to the whole parasocial relationship thing, because like you said, like they're not listening to this reporter or this quote unquote expert, but they don't know those people, right? We're emotional creatures, and we get attached to certain people, and sometimes we want to defend our friends no matter what, right? But sometimes what that means is that we don't question them when they're spouting bullshit. And if these people who are listening to some of these podcasts feel like those folks are their friends, they're not going to question it.
Yeah. So this report was in 1910. And so that changed medical education in terms of standardizing it, in terms of making it better. But now these people, like Casey Means and others on Twitter that I was looking at today, are making it seem like this was actually like a whole conspiracy, this Flexner report that created this whole system where all we do is prescribe medications. So, I mean, that narrative is a lie. It was all to try to make medical education better so we'd have better doctors. It was not to just give everyone medications and make a lot of money.
Yeah. I think overall it definitely seems like we got some pretty good doctors here. I think the goal worked.
One, I haven't read the whole report yet. It's pretty long, but I read quite a bit, and it talked about how they even looked at other countries to try to see what they could do to make medical education better. So it was quite extensive. Like, they traveled throughout the entire country here, and they looked at other countries to try to figure out what they could do so we wouldn't have a bunch of quacks all over the place. Because we actually had more doctors per capita than the other countries at that point, but they weren't good. So the report's like, yeah, it's pointless for us to have all these doctors because they're not actually practicing good medicine.
Yeah. I think, like, in terms of their technique, we do have a lot of good doctors. I will say
Yes.
I've met some folks who, like, now I can see why some people become bad doctors in terms of how they view patients, both in terms of empathy and ego. You know, like, from what I understand from seeing my wife's peers and hearing about her peers through med school, the people who have the best time interacting with patients and just existing in a clinical space, you don't even have to have worked in healthcare before. It's just like working a job. And some people just have this thing in their mind that they're going to be a doctor ever since they're in high school or even earlier. So then they go to college, they go to med school, and then suddenly they're in charge of people's well-being and their entire lives, not having worked a job. And because a lot of those people come from a very specific affluent background, guess what? Like, they don't know how to talk to normal people who are the ones who are receiving this care most of the time, because everyone they know is some rich person from the suburbs.
I do think that the Flexner report ties into that a bit, because that is what created this situation where you have to be an elite student to get in. Right now, it's still very limited spots for med school, and so it's still pretty hard to get in. So that tends to favor people who have privilege growing up as far as tutoring and whatnot, or research experiences. So I think, if anything, at this point, we've created such a good system that we really need to work on massively increasing the medical school spots and the residency spots so that we can have more doctors. There are a lot of people who are perfectly capable who are being shut out because it's so hard to get into med school.
Yeah, a lot of solid forward medical grads. Like, folks are catching up outside the country too.
Yeah. But also in the U.S., I've known so many people that I know they could be doctors, but for whatever reason, maybe they didn't have the confidence or they didn't have the tutoring or whatever, they didn't go for it.
Yeah, med school's expensive. And all of the study materials that a lot of people recommend and use they add up.
Well, and especially people down here, they're really afraid of getting the med school debt. I remember a student that was at my college who was one of the best students. And she's like, I'm not going to go because of the debt. She definitely would have made it. She was a really smart, really good student. She definitely would have made it. But she was so afraid of the debt that she wouldn't do it.
Yeah, it's massive. And some folks whose families, like their parents are doctors, they don't worry about it because oftentimes their parent just pays for the entire thing, which is like $300,000. Sometimes like for like a state school.
Well, and it's my opinion on Casey Means, but I get the sense that she was privileged. And I think that kind of translates into her book and her situation. People from down here usually aren't going to be able to quit their ENT residency in the last year because they don't usually have a backup.
Yeah.
Some kind of family money or something. I also think that her book is written from a position of privilege. Like, you're not considering that a lot of people can't afford these types of foods. A lot of people don't have jobs where they can exercise properly. Some people just work jobs that sap them of their energy and their time.
Yeah.
I think even teachers, I find that job extremely hard just looking at what they do and their schedules. Like, when are they going to exercise?
Yeah.
That's tough. I mean, maybe if you wake up at 5 a.m. every day, but then now you're probably sleeping less. And that's inflammatory and not good for your body.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that we need to rethink and try out. But hey, maybe as a country, we can go into the new year with the resolution to re-examine, be better, become friends.
Well, just be aware that Casey Means is really influential in this administration. She's a big influence on RFK. So that's why it's important to know what's going on in terms of her book, her thought process.
You mean the worm guy?
RFK, the worm guy, yes.
You didn't read any of the praise on the back of this book?
Oh, what does it say?
One of them's by a functional medicine doctor, right?
It says, fitness and healthy food should be at the center of how we think about preventing and reversing disease and obesity, but they aren't. Good Energy explains why this is the case and provides readers tactical tips to take their power back. Wow.
So
I'm sold.
So maybe you could read that book, check it out from the library so you don't have to spend any money.
Don't they still get money, though?
I don't know how that works, but probably less. All right, well, good chat with you guys today.
Yeah, we got things to do. We're very interesting people.
We gotta go work out tomorrow.
Case Means would approve.
All right.
See you later.
Until next time.
Bye.